On August 24, 1814, during the War of 1812, First Lady Dolley Madison saves a famous George Washington portrait from British soldiers, who burned the White House and other federal buildings in Washington, D.C. Dolly Payne was born to a Quaker family in North Carolina in 1768. The following year, the family moved to Hanover County, Virginia, and then to Philadelphia when Dolly was 15. She married Philadelphia lawyer John Todd in 1790, and the couple had 2 sons. 3 years after their marriage, a yellow fever outbreak in the city killed 5,000 people, including Dolly's husband and their younger son, William. Philadelphia was the capital of the young United States at the time. James Madison of Virginia was there, serving as an influential member of the U.S. House of Representatives. Madison had gained prominence as a delegate to the Constitutional Convention in 1787. He is known today as the father of the Constitution, having authored the Virginia Plan, the basis of the document. Madison also penned the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, now known as the Bill of Rights. In May 1794, U.S. Senator Aaron Burr of New York introduced the 26-year-old widow Dolly Payne Todd to 43-year-old bachelor James Madison. They married 4 months later, but were a bit of an odd couple. James was a shy bookworm, while Dolly was the gregarious life of the party. The couple had no children. Less than 15 years later, James Madison was elected the 4th President of the United States. Dolly helped define the role of the First Lady, holding White House social functions that included guests from both major political parties. In the final year of Madison's first term as president, he approved Congress's declaration of war against Britain, marking the official start of the War of 1812. Much of the motivation for this war came down to Americans wanting to uphold the nation's sovereignty and vindicate its honor. Keep in mind that the War of 1812 was happening at the same time as the Napoleonic Wars in Europe. This created huge trade opportunities for U.S. merchants, who were, naturally, selling goods to both sides. In response, Britain issued a series of decrees known as the Orders in Council to limit American trade with its enemies. Britain then used its powerful Royal Navy to enforce the orders. A key aspect of the decrees was that Britain claimed the right to search and seize merchant ships bound for French ports. In the process of searching American vessels, Britain practiced impressment. This meant that the British would go beyond simply inspecting U.S. ships. They would, in fact, force American seamen into the chronically undermanned British Navy. Another factor that led to war was Americans' desire to expand settlement into Native American, British, and Spanish territories in North America. Many in the U.S. aspired, for example, to conquer Canada and thereby end British influence on the continent. Britain scored a major victory in the war on August 24, 1814, when it captured Washington, D.C. in an amphibious assault and proceeded to burn several federal buildings, including the U.S. Capitol and the White House. Having been forewarned of the British advance, Dolly Madison directed White House servants, including enslaved teenager Paul Jennings, to remove the 8-foot-tall Gilbert Stuart painted portrait. Newspapers of the time circulated a report that the First Lady saved the painting, a story which bolstered patriotism and revived support for the war. Although there is some doubt as to whether Dolly personally supervised the painting's removal, her quick thinking in a moment of crisis helped preserve the portrait, which today hangs in the East Room of the White House. Another copy of the painting can be found at the Smithsonian's National Portrait Gallery in Washington, D.C. After their time in the White House came to an end, the Madisons retired to Montpelier, their plantation in Virginia. As for Paul Jennings, the 15-year-old who helped Dolly save the famous portrait, he was brought back to Washington with Dolly in 1837, after she sold Montpelier following James Madison's death the previous year. Tragically, Jennings had to leave behind his wife and 5 children, who resided on a neighboring plantation. In 1846, Dolley sold the 47-year-old Jennings to a D.C. insurance agent named Pollard Webb. 6 months later, U.S. Senator and former Secretary of State Daniel Webster of Massachusetts purchased Jennings' freedom for $120, about $4,000 today. With Webster's help, Jennings was able to secure a job as a laborer and messenger at the pension office. Jennings also became a noted abolitionist, helping to plan an 1848 attempted mass escape of 77 enslaved people in Washington on the schooner Pearl. Poor winds delayed the ship, and the fugitives were recaptured in Maryland. 3 of Jennings' sons escaped slavery during the American Civil War and joined the Union Army. In 1865, he published A Colored Man's Reminiscences of James Madison, which historians consider the first White House memoir. In the book, Jennings wrote of the famous saving of the George Washington portrait 51 years earlier, saying, "It has often been stated in print that when Mrs. Madison escaped from the White House, she cut out from the frame the large portrait of Washington and carried it off. This is totally false." According to Jennings' account, Dolley Madison ordered the removal of the painting, but the President's steward and gardener actually took it down and sent it off on a wagon out of harm's way. Paul Jennings died in 1874, leaving a modest house and property in northwest Washington, D.C. to his children. Here are other events that happened today in history. In AD 79, Mount Vesuvius erupts in southern Italy, destroying the Roman cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum. In 1821, Spain signs the Treaty of Cordoba, approving a plan for Mexican independence. In 1941, Hitler orders an end to his systematic murder of mentally ill and mentally disabled Germans. In 1958, Maria Teresa de Filippis becomes the first woman to ever compete in Formula One. In 1991, Ukraine declares independence from the Soviet Union, which dissolves a few months later. In 1995, Microsoft launches the Windows 95 operating system, which features its new Start button feature. In 2012, Anders Breivik, who killed 77 people in Norway in 2011, is sentenced to 21 years in prison. And now it's time for our Today in History quiz. Which astronomer used a telescope to discover that the moon's surface is not smooth? Galileo Galilei, Johannes Kepler, Isaac Newton, or Nicholas Copernicus? Think you know the answer? Drop your guesses in the comments below. Find out if you're right next time on Today in History. You made it through Today in History. Nice work. Now treat yourself. Click the video on the right for what happened yesterday in history. Still can't get enough? The link on the left's got the whole playlist buffet. Want to make history a daily habit? Click my face in the middle to subscribe.